David Eickholt and Sean Bock here from 24/7 Sports, HawkeyeInsider.com. No Elliott today. Yeah, stuck at a wedding. Need to ban fall weddings. Needs to be a thing. Lot to recap, obviously, with Iowa's win over UMass 47-7. Kirk Ferentz breaking the Big Ten wins record. For people who do want to know about Iowa's newest basketball commit, Sean, you have a YouTube reaction video on our YouTube page, and you also have about 3 or 4 different articles on HawkeyeInsider.com about Harris.
Yeah, there's 2 up right now, the breaking story, and then I wrote a commitment profile, which is a pretty in-depth breakdown of him. Then Eric Bossi caught up with him yesterday before his commitment to get a couple quotes, and I plan to catch up with Ethan today or tomorrow to talk about the commitment and just kind of go more in depth on it. So yeah, I mean, that's before we get into football, that's a big win for the Iowa staff, getting things going in the 2026 class. Obviously, Trey Thompson was originally a 2026 recruit, went to the 2025 class. Harris is officially the first commitment in the 2026 class. And it's a big one, getting them over Washington and Gonzaga too. So not to go too in-depth on it on a football podcast, but felt like we had to mention it.
No, for sure. And like you said, Gonzaga and Washington both wanted him too. So for McCollum to kind of have that pull to give him to Iowa, it's a big deal. So obviously a lot to break down about the game. But Sean, I think we need to start with the biggest news, obviously. I mean, Kirk Ferentz becoming the winningest coach in Big Ten history. And I'm of the opinion, man, where this is going to be a record that I don't think was ever going to be broken. And I thought it was kind of interesting last night, listening to Kirk's post-game kind of comments about, because he said, Mary told me something about, I think she said 10, 15 years ago, where she said, head coaches might want to move every 8 to 10 years just because of fan fatigue, all the other factors involved. Then you think about Kirk being at Iowa for 27 years. And, I'm of the opinion, I think you are too, and kind of what we're hearing behind the scenes, Kirk wants to stick around for another, multiple more years, sign another contract. But for him to get this record, I think it's such a big deal just to have, an Iowa head coach at the top of the Big Ten list. And I thought it was a really cool scene last night, Sean, where Anthony Herron was interviewing Kirk, obviously Anthony Herron, former Hawkeye. And then you had the whole team behind the interview kind of watching him. A lot of fans end up staying. And then something that has never happened before was all the players and the coaches moved Kirk to the front of the swarm, and Kirk did the swarm for the first time ever. And he got pretty emotional about it. But to kind of see how everything unfolded, it was very on brand for Kirk Ferentz. It wasn't anything too over the top, but it was just so Kirk Ferentz and so Iowa. So to have all the video tributes and everything else with Kirk, I just think it shows what you and I have already known, seen close up. I think the state of Iowa knows, the amount of respect that his players and the fans have for him. It really is almost unparalleled.
Yeah, no, and I understand some of the frustrations that have occurred over the last couple of years with the offense, and kind of feeling like some people have been saying that the program's stale in a way. But at the end of the day, like Beth Getz said last week on KXNO, and like she said before, it's this will probably never happen again, in the Big Ten. There's not going to be Kirk said it too, he could have very well been fired after his 2 years if his first 2 years in Iowa City had it been in a different era with all the social media, just the media in general. The media is obviously very harsh, and that's an outside pressure at times, especially some of the national media. Who knows what the beat guys could write, stuff like that, or have that opinion. But he stuck to the plan and he stuck together. He was able to form a very good staff and very good people and recruit very good players, and just have, like he said, the right people around him to develop and bring up the program. And I saw a tweet earlier today from a former player that said, Kirk Ferentz, I hope Kirk realizes that he has the impact that he's had on just so many people and how that's carried over to the rest of their life. I think that's a really powerful statement too, because that's rare in this day and age, that authenticity and, that just caring about your players, not just for what they do on the field, but off the field and what they do in the future. That is an awesome, awesome thing to have in life. And I think as you get older too, you start to realize how those relationships and how those people older than you, how they molded you and how those lessons that you learned set you up for the future. And I think that's something that, a lot of people, obviously we want to see, or everyone wants to see like Iowa win. Like they want to see, like we like seeing Iowa win because it's good for like business. Like, and I get the frustration with everything too, but just to see kind of the impact he's had with the people, not just like the players, but the parents, coaches, like support staff, like just to see that and stay at a place for so long. And there's a reason why the coaches that he has on the staff stay as long as they do. Like that's a really, I think, strong indicator of just kind of the guy he is and just how he runs things and what it's like to work for him. And there's a reason why not a lot of players transfer out. Like that's a big thing too. Like it's
even after the 2020 thing. I mean, that with the
Yeah.
whole racial disparity allegation, I think they lost one commit in that recruiting class. Everybody else stayed on board. It got to a point where Kirk was asking people, his team and former players, like, do I need to resign? I think all of them were like, no. I think they said the core of the problem is not him specifically as a person and everything else like that. But you're right. I mean, I just think you can go up and down the list. I mean, you saw the video tribute that Big Ten Network put out, like from all the former players, Tristan Wirfs, Cooper DeJean, I mean, Jay Higgins. They had a bunch of players over the years. His impact he's going to have a statue outside Kinnick Stadium. I think that's bar none. And, I've heard the idea floated around about if they have a statue and he's waving to the Children's Hospital. And I think that's exactly like the type of impact that he'd want to leave, because how much we hear about Kirk Ferentz? Like, yeah, obviously the football is the major part of it, but he always talks about wanting to mentor young men and like get to know people. And he's said repeatedly the reason why he stayed in Iowa is because of the people. And interestingly enough, Sean, I asked Mark Gronowski last night, just from his perspective, like why it's worked. And I know he'd only been on campus for a few months, but he basically just said he's the perfect Midwestern guy. And to have a guy like an actual Midwestern, I'm not saying KF isn't, but Mark being born in Illinois, being around all this type of stuff, for him to say that about somebody from Pennsylvania when he moved to Iowa, and for him to kind of just stick it out, it really is incredible. Again, if he ends up going 3 or 4 more years, Beth's exactly right, Sean. Like, this is not going to happen again. Especially with the NIL and how crazy everything is. He's going to be not just an Iowa icon. He's going to be a Big Ten icon for the history. Like, you cannot tell the history of the Big Ten Conference without Kirk Ferentz. And I think that's probably one of the biggest compliments that he'll be able to get whenever his career is all said and done. So want to make sure we touch on that. But Sean, let's dive into the football aspect of last night. I'm not going to be that guy that sits here and rips off hot takes and takes too much away from last night, considering how overmatched UMass was, because I think we kind of knew what was going to come. I thought they did, for the most part, exactly what they should have done. The defense not getting a turnover is still incredibly concerning to me. We're going to dive into that in a little bit. Probably start with the passing game. Sean, I wish Lester threw it a little bit more, but I loved how aggressive they came out of the gates. 3 plays, but 70 yards. Had a great pass to Sam Phillips and obviously Seth Anderson on that touchdown. Seth Anderson getting 2 first-quarter touchdowns. But that's the type of offense I think you need to see throughout the rest of the year. Iowa's got to stretch the field. They got to be aggressive. And Mark Gronowski, I thought, actually looked substantially better. I thought he was late on a couple of his throws. But I thought for the most part, from the quarterback perspective, he was good. But, man, Sean, they got to clean up those drops. There were at least 4 drops last night that were just you can't miss those throws. So we haven't had the chance to actually catch up at all since the game ended. So I'll let you kind of rip off your opinions of where this offense was, especially in the passing game, and how they kind of move forward and build off that.
Yeah, before we go into that, I was just looking at YouTube on my TV. I kind of like to have something in the background just to kind of watch. The official Iowa YouTube account released a 22-minute long video titled Kirk Ferentz, the winningest coach in Big Ten football history. And it looks like it's a bunch of interviews with like former players and a bunch of like different like video clips from the past and stuff. So that looks like something that if you're interested would definitely be worth your time watching. They do a great job with that stuff. I know they put in a lot of hard work and a lot of time to get those interviews and whatnot together. But yeah, from last night, the first thing that stood out was the passing attack, like right off the jump. I mean, just to see that aggressiveness, I thought was really, really encouraging for this offense because it was the boost that it needed. Because we've seen the first couple of weeks just kind of the lack of having an explosive passing attack and being able to get the ball down the field. And I thought it was especially important to get the ball to Sam Phillips on that big game because he's been a receiver where you watch the film and you look back, you see that he's open on a number of different routes and a number of different plays. And, Mark just isn't able to get him the ball or isn't able to get him the ball in rhythm or the right time. And you could, I wouldn't say frustration, but you're kind of like, dude, like if you're a wide receiver, you're kind of like, man, like just give me the ball. Like I just need the ball. And I think that's something that Phillips, wasn't necessarily saying, but I think somewhere in his head, he's just like, guys, like just get me the ball. Like I can make plays. And we saw that on yesterday. I thought he's a really good piece in that Iowa wide receiver game. Not just a short route guy, but being able to get out wide and, make plays in the intermediate game and, make some big gains and use his speed to get open and find the holes of the defense. I thought that was a really encouraging thing. And to see Seth Anderson, that's another guy who I think Iowa should be able to utilize more in the passing game with everything that we've heard from the fall and how he's really been able to elevate. The first 3 drives were great. Like I think those were really encouraging drives. And then you kind of, maybe take your foot off the gas a little bit, but also that could just be from how the game was going. I mean, that block punt kind of seemed like it was kind of just, you're watching this game and you think to yourself, okay, like Iowa's going to win this game 60-0 or 70-0. Like everything was going their way until that block punt. And you're kind of just like, oh, okay, like there's another team on the field right now. Like you're not playing 11-0 right now. You're playing 11-11 against a team who may not be, a good team in the FBS ranks, probably is going to be like near the bottom of the MAC this year, is still a football team with, Division I players on it. So that kind of, settled things down a little bit. And you have a couple of drops that I think, yes, are an issue. KJ Parker, he's had a couple of drops this season. I think he's got like 4 or something, maybe. I know he had 2 last night. I think he has like 3 or 4 drops in the year already. And that was like his touchdown catch was his first collegiate catch. And I'm like, wow, they've been trying to get him. I mean, they tried to get him the ball a couple of times against Albany. I think he played maybe like a few snaps against Iowa State. But it's like,
I think he had about 5. He was not.
But it's like, he had a couple of drops there. And, you could see the talent with him, but he's got to be able to come up with some of those passes. And DJ Vanami had a drop too. He's the tight end who played the most snaps yesterday. I don't know if that was by design or like they were like, okay, we don't really need Large in the game. Let's just throw Vanami in there because Vanami had the second most snaps against Iowa State at the tight end position behind Large. So offensively, I mean, just to see the passing game kind of work and just see that it's like, okay, they can really have an explosive passing game or they have the pieces to make it happen, albeit it was against Albany. I thought that was really encouraging. The run game was fine. Like I wasn't like too moved by it. There wasn't really many big gains. And I think that was partly because UMass was maybe preventing a little bit. And they have some pretty good line. I think UMass has some decent linebackers too. So that could have played a role. So offensively, like those are kind of my big takeaways. Defensively, there wasn't a ton like for me to really take away from this game. I thought the defensive line pressure was really good. Thought Aaron Graves has been really solid to start the year, especially to start games. I feel like he's been really impactful to start games with his pressure up the middle. And then I think it was good to see Max Lowen and Ethan Hurkett get pressure off the edge because that was one of my big concerns coming out of that Iowa State game. I know Iowa State gets the ball away pretty quickly, but I thought seeing those guys get some pressures was really encouraging because they were kind of missing last week at times while Graves and Pace were kind of the main guys getting that pressure up the interior. So, sum it all up. I mean, I'm like you said, I'm not really going to take away anything from this game. I think we'll know a lot more about this Iowa team after a half against Rutgers than we will in this game last night.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's a lot of pressure on this game on Friday because, look, Iowa's entering as a 2.5-point favorite according to DraftKings, and this is a game where I think you mean Elliott preseason thought that Iowa was going to roll, and I still am kind of the opinion I think Iowa will win by double digits. But you also have to add this, man. Like Iowa's injury situation got a little bit worse yesterday too. I mean, think about this. Xavier Williams, his arm was in a sling at the end of the game, and Kirk just said he's going to be sore. He really didn't have an official diagnosis. So if you lose Xavier Williams going in against Rutgers, like that's a guy who, again, he's big, he's physical, he can kind of wear down the opposing defense. And it was interestingly enough, too, Sean, two things. One, Kirk said Kamari Moulton could be back next week, which would be a little bit of a surprise to me, but man, that would be a boost. But two, Nathan McNeil was the game's leading rusher when it was all said and done with 56 yards yesterday. And that's a guy who I continue to be really impressed with. And I don't know if I'd like to see him utilized more, but I mean, if the numbers in the running back room keep dwindling, like you're going to have to give him some opportunities. And he's clearly really shown up when he's been able to. So again, I thought Mark played pretty well. The drops, like you said, that has to be 100% cleaned up. I'm not even saying they have to be perfected, but like some of Mark's best passes are falling as incompletions because guys are not catching the football. And I'm not talking like the ones they might have a shot at or like they have to go way out of their way, reach behind them. I'm talking about like it's in the chest, right above their head, or in the easy vicinity where they just have to be able to grab that, right? Division I player getting paid. Got to be able to do it. We'll get back to the offense in a second. I thought it was the O-line's one of their worst games, to be honest, Sean, just based on the talent level too. I thought they got in the backfield a little bit too much in the run game. The holes really weren't fantastic. At times they were okay. But something that I think we all took kind of for granted entering the season, I'm not going to say I'm in a full panic about it yet. That's special teams, man. Like we thought that was going to be a top 5 unit in college football, and they have not been good. I mean, Caden Weegen, and credit Caden Weegen from this standpoint. He had, again, it's UMass, I get it. But that 95-yard return was special. Like what he was able to do and all the players he had to juke out, I thought it was spectacular. He clearly wanted to house one, and I asked him about it after the game. He said, yeah, I was kind of not happy with the third or fourth one I had because I got tackled, and I felt like I could have housed it. But outside of that, man, like the blocked punt against that team, that coverage completely broke down. I need to rewatch it a couple more times, but like I don't know who was blocking anyway. A missed extra point. And Sean, I want to ask you this because I got tweeted a couple times about it, and I don't know what the TV showed. Did Drew Stevens really miss that 38-yard field goal, or was it debatable? Because I had a few people tweeting at me from my angle. I could not see it.
Yeah, it kind of looked like it was like he's got a weird like snap in some of his kicks where like it looks like it's gonna miss and then it just somehow comes back in. I don't know if that was a win factor, like how he kind of does that. It was close. Like it looked like it kind of went over the cross. It went over the whatever the thing is called
Upright.
on the side. Yeah, it looked like it went over the upright, but it like coming in, it was off. But then like once it hit over it, like it looked good. So I don't know. I'll have to look back and kind of watch that over again. I know I had to do a rewatch later today because I missed. I think I fell asleep by the time Kirk Ferentz was talking post game and then mentioned the Xavier Williams thing because I missed that too.
Well, I mean, to be fair, he didn't even hit the podium until like 11:30.
Yeah, it's way past my bedtime. Yes, I mean, special teams has been definitely a little bit concerning, and like I said, I mean, it kind of took the momentum out of the game, or at least for Iowa, where it didn't matter like in the end. But I thought that block punt really was like, and it put the defense in a tough spot too. But I think UMass, their first 3 drives all had like negative gains, like negative total yards on their first 3 drives.
Yep.
In that next drive, like UMass offense kind of just went there, went down the field or went. I know they didn't have a lot of field to go down,
like
but
20. Let me double check. I got
something like that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I thought it was a great tackle by Jay Montgomery because they absolutely should have returned that for a touchdown. Like that was really.
And I think it was Montgomery who missed his like chip or missed his block too.
Yeah,
I think Tyler Kluver tweeted that.
21 yards, by the way. It was 21.
Yeah, I think Montgomery was the one that kind of missed his block or didn't stay long enough to like get his.
I need to look at that. Okay.
Yeah, but. I mean, as Kirk Ferentz said, I know we make fun of him sometimes or like we give him like a hard time in terms of like caring so much about special teams and, having a really good special teams. But look at that Minnesota game last night too. Like Coy Parrick coming up with some of those, some of those returns and some of those muffs that he had and those mistakes and mental mistakes that he had on special teams. Like that ultimately decided the game for Minnesota, or at least played a really big role. And obviously Caden Weechin went through those struggles last week against Iowa State. But if you're blocking punts too, like look at what that result has had in some of the Nebraska Iowa games the last couple of years too. So it's huge. It's huge in games, and you got to be able to clean that stuff up, because if you're playing Indiana at home, like Indiana's going to take advantage of those mistakes, and
Yes.
they have an offense that can really be dangerous too. So you got to be able to clean that up. You have to be good in all three phases.
You're right, and I think one of the things is LeVar Woods has still earned the benefit of the doubt, and that's kind of where I'm going to hang my hat on at this point. I'm going to choose to believe him. From a talent perspective, I mean, Iowa has the talent to be a really good special teams unit, and I think a lot of the players are coachable. So I expect a big comeback performance against Rutgers. Again, Caden Weechin was spectacular. I mean, I thought Tim Lester's play calling was pretty solid for the most part. I did think they kind of took their foot off the gas in that second quarter, but like Weechin being able to have that 20-yard rushing touchdown, to be able to house the punt. I mean, Iowa showcased a lot of good things. Again, I know it's UMass. There's a lot of reasons to dismiss it. I'm not going to overreact to it. But at some point, man, like especially with the passing game, Iowa's not in a position to like not gain confidence from a performance against UMass because of how bad the passing game has been. The one thing I really do wish they did, Sean, by the way, Reese Vanderzee was not on credit. I don't think he had a boot on either yesterday. So that's going to be major news. I don't think he comes back for Indiana still. I think they're going to wait till after the bye week. Maybe if he's healthy, they slowly up his snap count and increase kind of just like snap count, maybe 15, just because they want to get his conditioning right, especially with a foot injury. I really wish they threw Dayton Howard the ball downfield a couple times, just because he's 6'5", his frame's built different. He's got speed. The two times they did give him the ball, I thought he had a great catch to get a first down. But the other one I was just a little bit confused by, and I wish we got a chance to talk to Lester to be able to ask him. The screenplay when they were down inside that like 10-yard line to Dayton Howard, that doesn't seem like that's in Dayton Howard's skill set. That's like a KJ Parker skill set. That's like maybe a Sam Phillips when it comes to like a wide receiver screen. Dayton Howard just does not seem like he'd fit that kind of billing. So that was kind of questionable. But again, I loved how Iowa really came out and focused on the deep pass because, like we said leading up to it, there's really no other week where they're going to be able to focus on the deep passing game like they would against this team. I mean, consequent-free, quote-unquote, right? So we'll have to see if that translates over to Rutgers. I think Iowa's going to have its handful of opportunities. I think Mark played with so much more confidence. Even if you want to take it from this standpoint, Sean, Albany and UMass are two similar opponents. I think are two bad teams. But just look at the body language and the swagger that he had like between weeks 1 and 3. I think you can at least see a lot of growth there. Sam Phillips talked about that. Seth Anderson talked about that post game. Like Seth Anderson actually really went on, gave me a great answer about how passionate Mark is about football, especially on the sideline. And he said he's never seen Mark the way he was after that first touchdown drive. He says, as a wide receiver, I love seeing my quarterback getting juiced up and just energized. And I'm like, okay, is that going to be the turning point? Is that what a fast start does to Mark Gronowski's confidence? Does that move the offense, the offense as a whole? So I think a lot of interesting things to take there. But I want to flip back to the defense quick. Because like you said, defense pressure, they had some positives. On a scale of 1 to 10, Sean, how concerned are you with the fact they have not had a turnover through 3 games? Because that's it's not great.
That's one that I think that is definitely a little tough. I know Iowa's defense is always like kind of a prevent defense, so it's not necessarily, going to be a defensive like turnover machine, especially the last couple of years. But yeah, I don't know. Like that's interesting to me because I think this defense could be like the first defense or the first turnover for this defense could be like a strip sack or something. I think more than a turnover. I mean, you'd like to see a turnover, pick six, something like that. I think Callie-McManus has been pretty efficient to start the year. I think I know he doesn't have an interception to start. But yeah, that's one that I
he's
would like to see.
7 touchdowns for 820, no picks.
Yeah, that's something I'd like to see flip a little bit next week against Athens. I mean, we've seen in the past with Rathan, we've seen it in the past with Iowa being able to get pressure on him and being able to make him uncomfortable. And we've seen that he can, they can force a turnover, they can make something happen with the turnover, and cause pressure and make him, throw an errant pass. And I think there's something that they can do next week to change that. But I think to win some of these Big Ten games, you're really going to have come up with a big play on defense and change the course of the game. Because yes, the offense is what sputtered against Iowa State, but man, if the defense had, Iowa State doesn't beat itself much on the turnover side, especially Rocco Beck. But I think if you're able to, force a turnover or two in some of these other games, like especially when you go up against Indiana, Penn State, and Oregon, that can really flip the script of a game and could really be the difference in some of these other games too. Especially against Rutgers and, some of these other ones that you're favored in, but you're going on the road and you're playing a team that is maybe a little more even. I think Iowa's the better team than Rutgers, but I think just going on the road and seeing how Athens has played to start the year, if you're able to get to them early and cause a turnover or two, that could really, set you up well and put confidence in the offense too to make a play.
Yeah, and the other side of it too is we don't even know how opportunistic this offense is right now because they haven't really been put in a position to be able to have to capitalize, right? And the other side of it too is if Iowa's passing game is not where it needs to be, Sean, like you're not going to win games against these top opponents if you can't create turnovers and you can't throw the football. Like I hate to boil it down to be that simple, but I think that's not exactly breaking news for people, right? But you're exactly right. I think they're going to have to get to Kelly McManus. I think they're going to have to force a turnover. I think I'll be really interested to see what Phil Parker dials up. I think Jaden Harrell has had a handful of I feel like he's like the guy who's had some really good highlights, Sean, but then he has some really bad lowlights. Like I think when you see that, fifth-year guy, you need to see some form of stability. And got to be fair to Jaden Harrell too. Remember, he does have a forced fumble on the year, but I think that Iowa was not able to capitalize on that. So I'm probably at about 7.5 right now in terms of how worried I am about that, because I do think once they get one, maybe it spirals a little bit and creates a domino effect, but you still got to get that first one, and playing 3 full games of football without forcing a turnover. It's a problem, especially for when you think about over the years, how Iowa exactly has won games, right? Like Iowa's won games in the craziest ways over the last 4 or 5 years. How many of them were as a result of a turnover, blocked punt, obviously special teams with special teams, but pick six. I mean, hell, go back to the Nebraska game from last year when they were able to strip Dylan Raiola. They didn't have to move the ball far. They just had to say, hey, look, don't fumble the ball. Then Drew Stevens can go out there and kick a field goal. So I'm fairly worried. I mean, I'm still worried about the passing game as well, but I'm not going to criticize Iowa for going out there and doing what they needed to do. That's kind of where my baseline's at. I will say though, this Rutgers game is going to be a lot more important to the totality of the season than I originally thought. Like, I hate saying this, Sean, and we'll wrap it up with like this. Do you feel like Rutgers is a must-win game? I know it's game 4, but like, look at the way the rest of the schedule lines up. Like, this is a game where you have to have before you come back and host an Indiana team that's probably has a good shot against Illinois. If they beat Illinois, guess what? They're going to be ranked coming into Kinnick Stadium, and we know how Iowa's played against ranked teams.
Yeah, 3-1 going into Indiana looks a lot better than 2-2. And I think one thing I want to mention too about the offense is I thought maybe pass protection at times was a little suspect last night.
Yeah.
I think that was something that they need to clean up a little bit. And it was pretty good to start the year. Like, Gronowski got a bunch of time against Albany, got a bunch of time against Iowa State too, outside of that last 2-minute drill. But yeah, I do think it's a must win. I think it's a very important win because I think that can kind of set the tone for you for the rest of the year. And Iowa's goals are still out there in terms of the Big Ten. Like, I'm not saying they're going to win the Big Ten, but this is kind of the season that you really prep up for, and the season that really has like a huge impact on what the rest of the year looks like and, how you kind of perform. And yeah, I do think it's a really big game because honestly, to me, it seems like the most trying to not, it seems like the most winnable road game in Big Ten play right now. Like I think Wisconsin, like Iowa should go to Wisconsin and win that game, but that's Madison. Like that's not necessarily a place where Iowa's had a ton of success, except for as of late, with that 2023 game.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the road games right now because you have Rutgers. So you had Iowa
Rutgers,
State, Rutgers,
Iowa State,
you had
you have
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, and then USC, then Nebraska.
I mean, yeah, I think it's the most like winnable road game right now.
Yeah.
I think it's close between Wisconsin, but like I said, Madison is not necessarily a place where Iowa's been like, okay, we're going to go in and dominate.
It'll be interesting to see where the fan base is at, though, too, just based on
Yeah.
how they've started and like the gauntlet of schedule they have. Like, that's not even a shot at Wisconsin fans because we know how loyal they are. But Sean, like, again, I don't know who they pissed off at the Big Ten office because their schedule is so freaking brutal. But, talk about an offense that, I mean, Wisconsin's spirit might be broken. Like, that might be the game where if Iowa goes up, there's two ways to look at it, right? That might be the game where if Iowa goes up there, it's either going to potentially break this. That could be the game that breaks the spirit of Wisconsin's season, or that's going to be the game where Wisconsin really dials in on to take something away from this season. It's so early. I don't want to count them out, but like, again, you look at the schedule, you look at how they've played. There really aren't a ton of games where you're going to be like, hey, you know what, Sean? Wisconsin might pull off that upset. They might be able to go in there and beat this team, right? And again, just the way that it's kind of crumbled. So I'm with you. I think this is Iowa's most likely shot. We're going to dive into a lot more of that as the coming days go on. And remember, it's a Friday night game too. And Iowa does have a lot of experience with Friday night games compared to Rutgers on a yearly basis.
On the East Coast too. They've had, didn't mean to interrupt you, but on the East Coast, they've been pretty good lately too.
Yeah. They haven't lost to Rutgers since I don't think they've ever lost to Rutgers. So that'll be something to kind of keep an eye on. But any final takes from this game? I know we have to dive into certain aspects of it, and it's important that we did. But as far as like my overall perception of the team, I mean, it really hasn't changed outside of the fact that I'm much more alarmed about the lack of turnovers right now. But the passing game showed something.
Encouraged about the passing game, but you want to see that against. Yeah, I know you have to game plan. I know you don't want to take too many risks. Especially if you're Kirk Ferentz, but if you need to move the ball down the field, it showed that the passing game can do that potentially. Like, I'm encouraged by it. I wouldn't say I'm super optimistic about it. I'm encouraged about what it showed, but you have to be able to kind of keep your foot on the gas a little bit and, make more of what you have, as opposed to just having 3 drives and then, things sputtering after that. And, obviously special teams, I think we're both a little eerie about that too. And, all 3 units have their kind of concerns. And who knows, what could really happen. Like, this is what I think makes this team so much more volatile than the last couple of teams, even with the defenses that they had and the special teams unit that they had and how bad the offenses were, just because it feels like you don't really know what's going to happen with all 3 of the units in any game. Like, that's why I think this team is so volatile. Like, it could really be 9-3 or 10-2, or it could be 7-5, 6-6. Like, this team is, I think, gonna, cause some people to, have to maybe get on blood pressure medication or something, because it's gonna be up and down. It's gonna be up and down.
I'm with you. I don't know if I've changed my expectations too much, but like you said, and I know people are gonna be like, "Hey, you guys are just using this as an out," and I'll be like, watch the first 3 games, and you tell me where Iowa could go, right? Yeah. And again, we might be covering our own butts here by saying that, but it's true. So, Sean Bock, David Eickholt, HawkeyeInsider.com, Swarmcast. We're gonna have a ton of preview content throughout the week. Obviously, the game being accelerated. It's going to be on Friday night at 7 p.m. Central. I'm very excited. I'll actually be able to watch a lot of college football on Saturdays since we don't get the chance to do that much. But yeah, as always, stay locked in to HawkeyeInsider.com.